Pack your things. Mom said those exact 4 words while standing in Grandpa's kitchen like she owned it. 1 week after we buried him, my little sister was already upstairs laughing as she chose her bedroom in the only home I'd ever known. The same home they dumped me at when I was 5 and never came back for. 19 birthdays I called her, and she never once picked up. Now they showed up with an appraiser, talking about market value and family decisions, treating me like an unwanted guest in my own house. They thought I was still that helpless little girl. They had no idea Grandpa had left me one final instruction. And when I followed it, when that study door finally opened, their smiles died instantly. What was waiting inside proved they never really left me behind. They had been choosing to abandon me every single year. But today, the choosing finally stops. My name is Ava Medford. I'm 26 years old, and the first thing you should know about me is that I learned very early how to survive without being chosen. The house still smelled like him. Old wood, black coffee, and the faint trace of cedar that clung to every room like a memory, refusing to fade. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, my fingers pressed against the edge of the counter where he used to lean every morning, reading the paper with those half-moon glasses slipping down his nose. And she stood across from me. My mother, Clara Medford, looked exactly the same. Not a wrinkle more than I remembered, not a hint of regret in her eyes. Perfectly styled hair, tailored coat, heels clicking against the tile floor like she belonged here. Like she had always belonged here. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Ava," she said, her tone calm, almost rehearsed. "We all have to move forward." Move forward. The words echoed in my chest like something hollow. Upstairs, I could hear laughter. Light, careless, untouched by everything that had just been buried 6 feet underground a week ago. Lily. My little sister. She had been 2 years old the last time I saw her. Now she was 21, walking through my grandfather's house like she was flipping through a catalog, deciding what parts of my life suited her. "I like the one with the big window," she called out from upstairs. "Mom, you have to see this room." My grip tightened on the counter. That was my room. Or at least, it had been. "You heard her," my mother said, glancing toward the stairs with a faint smile. "Lily will take the upstairs. It makes the most sense." "For who?" I asked quietly. She looked back at me, almost confused by the question. "For the family." Something in me almost laughed. Family. That word didn't belong to us. Not anymore. Not after the purple suitcase. The memory came fast and sharp, like a blade sliding between ribs. June 2005. I was 5 years old, standing at the edge of this same kitchen, clutching the handle of a small purple suitcase with a cartoon cat on the front pocket. One of the wheels was broken, dragging behind me with a soft scraping sound every time I moved. "Just for a little while," my mother had said back then, crouching in front of me. Her hands rested lightly on my shoulders, careful, like she didn't want to wrinkle her clothes. "Grandpa will take good care of you." "How long?" I had asked. She smiled. That was the first lie. "Not long, sweetheart. We'll come back before you even miss us." I remember watching their car disappear down the long gravel driveway. I remember standing there long after the dust had settled, still holding that suitcase, still believing that any second they would turn around. They didn't. Not that day. Not the next. Not for 19 years. "Ava," my mother's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you even listening?" I blinked, the memory dissolving into the quiet hum of the kitchen. "I'm listening," I said. "Good," she replied. "Then you understand why this arrangement is necessary." Necessary. Another word that didn't belong to her. "You left me here," I said, my voice steady, even though my chest felt like it was tightening with every breath. "You don't get to decide what's necessary in this house." Her expression shifted slightly, not guilt, Not even discomfort, just annoyance. We did what we had to do, she said. You were better off here. Better off. With a man who wasn't even my parent, who stepped in and raised me without ever once making me feel like I was something left behind. You didn't call, I said. That's not. 19 birthdays, I continued, cutting her off. I called every year, same day, same time. She exhaled sharply, like this conversation was inconvenient. We're not here to revisit the past. Of course not. Because the past didn't hurt her. It only lived inside me. The front door creaked open behind her, and a man in a gray suit stepped inside, carrying a leather folder under his arm. He paused when he saw me, offering a polite, detached smile. Ms. Medford, he said, nodding to my mother. I've finished the preliminary assessment. Assessment. Like this house was just numbers on a page. Perfect timing, my mother said, turning toward him. We were just discussing next steps. Next steps. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder. Something clearer. They had already decided. They had walked into this house a week after burying the only person who ever chose me, and they had already planned how to divide it, sell it, reshape it into something that erased everything he had built. Everything he had protected. Everything he had left for me. They thought I was still 5 years old. Still standing in that driveway, waiting. Still small enough to be moved around, placed wherever it was convenient for them. They were wrong. You should see the study, the appraiser said, flipping open his folder. It's been locked, but if it's included in the property, we'll need access. My mother frowned slightly. The study? Yes, he replied. Your father mentioned it in some of the documents. Said it hadn't been opened in years. Her gaze flickered to me. Do you have the key? For a moment, I didn't answer. Because I could hear his voice. Not hers. Not theirs. His. My grandfather. Not until the right time, he had said, sitting in his chair by the window, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. And when that time comes, you open that door yourself, no one else. I had asked him why. He had just smiled. Because some things aren't meant for people who walk away. I looked at my mother now, at the man with the folder, at the life they were trying to reclaim like they had never abandoned it. And I realized something. The time had come. Yes, I said finally. Their attention sharpened instantly. I have the key. My mother's lips curved slightly, relief slipping into her expression. Good, she said. Then let's not waste any more time. No. Let's not. I reached into my pocket slowly, my fingers brushing against the small, cold piece of metal I had carried with me for years without ever using it. The key. Simple, worn, ordinary to anyone who didn't know what it meant. But to me, it was everything he never said out loud. I turned toward the hallway, my footsteps echoing softly against the wooden floor as I walked toward the one door in the house that had always stayed closed. The study. I could feel them behind me, my mother, the appraiser, even Lily now, her footsteps lighter but curious as she followed. What's in there? She asked. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Not completely. But I knew one thing. Whatever was waiting behind that door, it wasn't meant for them. I stopped in front of it, my hand resting against the old wood. The surface was cool beneath my palm, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. 19 years. 19 years of silence. 19 years of being left behind. And one final instruction. I slid the key into the lock. For a second, everything felt still. Then I turned it. The click echoed louder than it should have. And behind me, I heard my mother inhale sharply. Because something had just changed. And none of us could take it back. The door didn't open all at once. It resisted, like it had been waiting, like it needed to be sure it was truly time. The wood creaked softly as I pushed, the hinges groaning under years of silence. Dust shifted in the air, catching the faint light from the hallway behind us. And then it opened. The study smelled different from the rest of the house. Less like time had passed here, less like anything had been forgotten. Strange, the appraiser murmured from behind me, stepping closer. It's well preserved. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't looking at the room. I was looking at what was inside it. Everything was exactly as he had left it. The large oak desk stood by the window, papers stacked neatly in one corner. His chair was slightly pushed back, like he had just stood up and would return any second. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, some worn, some untouched. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. It was the safe. Built into the wall behind the desk, hidden in plain sight. My mother stepped forward immediately, her heels clicking faster now, sharper. "Well, that's convenient," she said, her voice carrying a hint of something almost eager. "Documents, most likely." "Or valuables," Lily added, her tone light, curious. I stepped into the room slowly, my eyes moving across everything like I was seeing it for the first time, even though I had stood at that doorway 100 times growing up. He never let me enter. Not once. Some doors, he used to say, are meant to stay closed until they're needed. And now I understood. "This is part of the estate," my mother said, turning to the appraiser. "We'll need everything documented." That word again. I walked past them without a word, my fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the desk. The surface was smooth, familiar. I could almost hear his voice again, low and steady, explaining things I was too young to fully understand at the time. He had been preparing me. I just hadn't realized it. "Ava," my mother's voice sharpened slightly. "The safe." I stopped in front of it. There was no keypad. No modern lock. Just a small, simple keyhole. Of course. "Do you have that key too?" the appraiser asked. I reached into my pocket again. But this time I didn't take it out right away. Because something inside me hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of realization. Once I opened this, everything would change. Not just for me. For them. Especially for them. "Ava," my mother repeated, impatience creeping into her tone. "Let's not drag this out." I glanced back at her. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Expectation, control, certainty. Like she already knew how this would end. Like she believed everything inside this room belonged to her. That belief was about to break. I turned back to the safe and slid the key in. The metal clicked softly. Then I turned it. This time the sound was louder. Final. The door of the safe opened slowly. Inside. Files. Stacks of them. Neatly organized. Labeled. And on top of everything, a single envelope. With my name on it. Ava. The room went quiet. "What is that?" Lily asked, stepping closer. My mother didn't speak. She was staring at the envelope like it wasn't supposed to exist. Like something had just gone wrong. I reached in and picked it up, my fingers tightening slightly around the edges. It felt heavier than it should have. Because it wasn't just paper. It was answers. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. His handwriting. Steady, Familiar. I swallowed hard before I began to read. If you're holding this, then it means I'm no longer there to say these things myself. My chest tightened instantly. I know you've been waiting a long time for answers, longer than anyone should have to wait, and I'm sorry for that. The room felt smaller. Quieter. They told you they had to leave you behind, that it was necessary, that it was temporary. I could feel my mother's gaze on me now. Sharp. Uncomfortable. They were wrong. The words settled into the room like something heavy. Unavoidable. They didn't have to leave you. Silence. They chose to. Lily shifted slightly behind me. Mom? But my mother didn't respond. She couldn't. Everything in this safe exists for one reason, to make sure you never have to wonder again. To make sure no one can rewrite what really happened. My hands trembled slightly as I lowered the letter. Because I already knew. This wasn't just a message. It was proof. What does it say? My mother asked, her voice quieter now, but tighter. Controlled. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time I saw it. Not guilt. Fear. It says, I replied slowly, that this was never your house. Her expression froze. That's not. It says, I continued, my voice steady now, stronger, that you didn't leave me here because you had no choice. The air shifted. Sharp. Cold. You left because you wanted to. That's enough, she snapped, stepping forward. Whatever he wrote. It's documented, I said, gesturing toward the files inside the safe. Everything. The appraiser stepped closer, hesitant now. Ms. Medford, if there are legal documents? There are, I said. And then I reached into the safe again. This time I pulled out a thick file. I opened it. The first page. A legal document. Signed. Stamped. Clear. I didn't need to read every word. I already understood. But I did anyway. Because I wanted them to hear it. This property, I read aloud, along with all associated assets, is to be transferred solely to Ava Medford upon my passing. The words hung in the air. Unmoving. Final. No shared ownership. No conditional division. Lily's voice came out softer this time. Mom? My mother didn't answer. She couldn't. Because for the first time since she walked into this house, she wasn't in control. I closed the file slowly and looked at her. You don't get to decide anything here, I said quietly. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. Because now, they understood. This house was never theirs to take back. The silence didn't break right away. It stretched, thin, tense, like something waiting to snap. My mother was the first to move. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice low but sharp. One document doesn't decide everything. But even as she spoke, there was hesitation in her step now. Less certainty, less control. That's not just one document, the appraiser said carefully, glancing at the open safe. If those files support what was just read, then legally, it changes a lot. A lot? My mother turned to him, her composure cracking slightly. It changes nothing. I am his daughter. And I'm his granddaughter, I replied. She froze again. And according to him, I continued, tapping the file lightly, that matters more. Lily shifted beside her, her earlier curiosity gone, replaced with something quieter, uneasy. You're twisting things, my mother said quickly. Your grandfather was old. People influence old men. He didn't mean. He documented everything, I cut in. I stepped forward and placed the file on the desk, opening it wider this time. Page after page, dates, signatures, notes, records. Not rushed. Not confused. Intentional. There are statements here, I said, my voice steady now. Signed over years. Not days. Not weeks. Years. The appraiser leaned in slightly, scanning a page. His expression shifted almost immediately, from neutral to cautious. "Ma'am," he said to my mother, "these appear consistent," and witnessed. "No," she snapped. "No, this isn't final. There are always ways to contest these things." "Of course," he replied carefully, "but it would require evidence to the contrary." The word hung there. Evidence. I reached back into the safe again. There's more. My fingers closed around another envelope, thinner this time, but sealed. I opened it without hesitation. Inside. Photos. Old ones. I didn't need to look closely to recognize them. But I did anyway. Because I wanted to be sure. The first photo showed the front of this house years ago. The paint fresher. The garden full. And in front of it, my mother. Standing beside a man I barely remembered. And a child. Lily. Young. Smiling. No sign of me. My chest tightened. "What is that?" Lily asked softly. I didn't answer. I flipped to the next one. Another moment. Another year. Different place. Same pattern. Them. Together. Without me. "They visited," I said quietly. My mother didn't respond. "They came back," I continued, my voice dropping slightly, "just not for me." "That's not fair," she snapped immediately. "You don't understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly," I said. I held up the photos slightly. "He knew," I added. "He kept track." Lily's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Mom, is that true?" "This is being twisted," my mother said quickly, but the words didn't land the same anymore. They didn't hold. Because the truth was already sitting in the open. Visible. Documented. I placed the photos down gently beside the file. "And this isn't all," I said. Because it wasn't. Not even close. "There are financial records here," I continued, pulling another section forward. "Payments, transfers, support sent directly to you." My mother's head snapped toward me. "Don't," she warned. "You said you had nothing," I said, "that you couldn't take care of me." Her silence this time was louder than anything she could have said. "But you did," I continued. "You just chose to spend it somewhere else." Lily took a small step back. "Mom?" "I did what I had to do," she suddenly burst out, the control finally cracking. "You think life is simple? You think I had options?" "You had me," I said. The room went still again. Completely still. And for the first time, she didn't have an answer ready. The appraiser cleared his throat quietly, shifting his weight. "Given what's being presented, I'd strongly recommend pausing any assumptions about shared claims to the estate." "That's not your decision," my mother snapped. "No," he replied calmly, "but it may very well be hers." He gestured slightly toward me. And just like that, everything shifted again. I closed the file slowly, took a breath, and then I did something neither of them expected. I stepped aside. Not away. Just enough to make space. "For years," I said quietly, "I thought this house was the only thing I had left of him." My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. But it's not, I added. I looked back at the safe. At everything inside it. This isn't about the house. They were both watching me now. Waiting. Careful. It's about the truth, I said, and what comes next. My mother narrowed her eyes slightly. What are you implying? I met her gaze. Fully. Directly. I'm not done opening things, I said. And then I reached back into the safe one more time. Because something at the very back, hidden behind everything else, had been waiting. For me. My fingers brushed against it before I even saw it clearly. Something smaller. Flat. Hidden behind the files like it had never been meant to be found easily. I pulled it out slowly. It wasn't a document. It wasn't a photo. It was a recording device. Old, but not that old. Small, rectangular, with a single button and a tiny speaker. The room shifted instantly. What is that? Lily asked, her voice tight now. I turned it over in my hand. On the back, in faint ink, a label. For Ava. My pulse picked up. No, my mother said quickly. Too quickly. We're not doing this. That could be anything. It's his, I said quietly. And before she could step forward, I pressed play. At first, nothing. Just a soft crackle. Then, his voice. Slightly worn, older, but unmistakable. If you're hearing this, then I made the right decision, and the wrong one at the same time. The air in the room changed. Even the appraiser straightened slightly. I never believed in leaving things unsaid, his voice continued. But some truths needed time, needed proof, needed you to be strong enough to hear them. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Your mother will try to explain things. She always does. She's very good with words when she needs to be. My mother's face tightened. But this time, he added, you need more than words. A pause. Long enough to feel. To understand why you were left behind, you have to understand what she was protecting. Silence. Sharp. Heavy. What are you talking about? My mother whispered, but it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at the voice. At him. There was never a moment where she had no choice, he continued. There was only a moment where she chose what mattered more. My grip on the device tightened. And that choice, he said quietly, wasn't you. Lily took a step back. No, she murmured. But that's not the whole truth, his voice added. And just like that, everything shifted again. Because if that wasn't the whole truth, then something worse was coming. There are things your mother was involved in, he said slowly. Decisions that carried consequences. Legal ones, financial ones. The appraiser's attention sharpened instantly. I tried to keep you away from it, he continued. That's why you stayed here. That's why I made sure everything would eventually come to you, clean, untouched. My heart was pounding now. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about something bigger. Something ongoing. She will deny this, he said. She will say I misunderstood, or that I'm protecting you with lies. A faint crackle. Then, I am protecting you, he corrected quietly, just not with lies. My mother shook her head, stepping forward now. Turn it off, she said, her voice low, urgent. Ava, turn it off right now. I didn't. She was given opportunities, his voice continued. Money, support, ways out. I glanced at the documents on the desk. The transfers. The records. But instead, he said, she chose to stay involved. Involved in what? Lily asked, her voice trembling now. The answer came. Clear. Final. Debt. The word hit harder than anything before it. Not ordinary debt, he continued. The kind that doesn't disappear. The kind that follows. The kind that demands more than money when it's not paid. The room went cold. No, my mother said immediately. That's not, he didn't understand. I understood enough, his voice cut in, calm even through the recording. Enough to know that if you stayed with her, you would be pulled into it too. I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger. Not just hurt. Understanding. A dark, heavy kind. That's why you were left with me, he said. Not because you weren't wanted, but because you were the only thing worth protecting. Silence. Deep. Unmoving. And now, he added softer, if she's come back, it's not for you. My mother stopped moving. Completely still. It's because she needs something. I lowered the device slightly. Slowly. Carefully. Because I already knew what that something was. I looked at the open safe. At the documents. At the house. At everything that now legally belonged to me. And then I looked at her. Her face had changed. Not just fear. Not just anger. Desperation. Ava, she said, her voice quieter now, controlled again, but thinner. You don't understand the full situation. No, I replied softly. I think I finally do. Lily looked between us, her voice barely holding. Mom, what is he talking about? My mother didn't answer. Because she couldn't lie her way out of this. Not anymore. The truth wasn't just spoken now. It was recorded. Proven. Waiting. I set the recorder down on the desk. Next to the files. Next to the photos. And then I said the one thing that changed everything again. Who are you in debt to? The question didn't just land. It echoed. And for the first time, she didn't try to deny it. She hesitated. And that hesitation was the answer. The hesitation didn't last long. But it was enough. Enough to confirm everything. My mother exhaled slowly, like she had been holding something in for years, and it was finally slipping out whether she wanted it to or not. It's complicated, she said. No, I replied. It's not. Her eyes snapped back to mine. You owe someone, I continued, and you came here because you think this house fixes that. That's not why I'm here, she said quickly. But this time. It sounded weak. Unconvincing. Even to her. Then why now, I asked. After all these years? Silence. Lily looked between us, her voice barely steady. Mom, just tell the truth. My mother closed her eyes for a second. Just one. But when she opened them again, something had shifted. Not honesty. Not fully. But resignation. They're not the kind of people you ignore, she said quietly. The words landed heavy. Who? I pressed. She shook her head. You don't need to know that. I do, I said. If they're coming here, I do. They're not, she started. But then she stopped. Too late. The appraiser spoke up carefully, tension creeping into his tone now. Ma'am, if there are external claims, threats, or liabilities tied to you, and you're attempting to attach them to this property. I'm not attaching anything, she snapped. This has nothing to do with the house itself. Then it has everything to do with you, I said. And that was the problem. Because wherever she went, It followed. They don't care about technical ownership, she admitted quietly. They care about value. My stomach tightened. Value. They know about this place? I asked. Another pause. Another mistake. Yes. The word barely left her lips. But it was enough. Lily's voice cracked. You told them about this house? I didn't have a choice, she shot back. They already knew I had access to something. They just didn't know what. And now? I asked. She looked around the room. At the desk. At the safe. At everything. They'll know soon enough, she said. The weight of that settled over all of us. Heavy. Immediate. Real. The appraiser straightened, his professional tone tightening. I strongly recommend that I conclude my involvement here for now. This situation may extend beyond a standard estate evaluation. You're leaving? Lily asked. For the moment, he replied, until ownership and liability are stabilized. He glanced at me briefly. Not fear. Not exactly. But caution. And then he stepped back, already distancing himself from whatever this was becoming. The door to the study remained open. But suddenly, it didn't feel like an exit. It felt like an opening. Ava, my mother said, her voice softer now. Different. Listen to me. We can figure this out together. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because of how predictable it was. Together? I repeated. Yes, she said quickly. This affects all of us now. No, I said. It affects you. Her expression hardened slightly. They won't see it that way. Then that's your problem, I replied. Her composure cracked again. You think they'll just leave you alone? She snapped. You think owning this place makes you untouchable? I think, I said slowly, that you brought something here that doesn't belong. And you think you can just push it back onto me? She challenged. Yes. The word came out simple. Clean. Certain. Because for the first time, I understood the difference between us. She ran from consequences. I didn't have to. They're expecting payment, she said, desperation creeping back in. Soon. How much? I asked. She hesitated. Then. More than I can cover. Of course. And you thought this would, I said, gesturing around the room. I thought, she corrected, that I had a right to it. You don't. Silence. Again. But this one felt different. Because something else had entered the space. Something unspoken. Unseen. But very real. A presence. Not in the room. But coming closer. You don't understand how serious this is, she said quietly. I held her gaze. Then explain it. She shook her head again. They don't wait, she said. They don't negotiate twice. A chill ran through me. Because now, this wasn't just about the past, or ownership, or truth. This was about time. Running out. And just as that realization settled, a sound broke through the silence. Faint, but unmistakable. From somewhere outside the house. A car door. Closing. Lily froze. My mother went completely still. And I didn't move. Because I already knew. They're early, she whispered. And just like that, the consequences arrived. The next morning didn't feel like morning at all. It felt like the quiet before something broke. Daniel stood by the large window in the main hall, staring out at the estate grounds. The mist hadn't lifted. It clung stubbornly to the trees, to the gravel path, to the iron gates that had once symbolized power, and now looked more like a warning. Behind him, footsteps echoed. Clara. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Daniel didn't turn. Neither did you. A pause settled between them, thick, uneasy, familiar. "We need to talk," Clara finally said. Daniel exhaled slowly, then turned around. About which part? The missing files? The threats? Or the fact that half the staff refuses to meet my eyes? Clara stepped closer, her expression tight but controlled. About the trustees. That word landed heavier than the rest. Daniel's jaw tightened. What about them? They've called for an emergency meeting. When? This afternoon. Daniel let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Of course they have. Clara crossed her arms. They're going to challenge your authority. They already are. No, she said firmly. This time, it's official. Silence. Daniel walked past her, running a hand through his hair. On what grounds? Clara hesitated, just for a moment. That you're unfit. Daniel stopped walking. The word hung in the air like a blade. Unfit, he repeated slowly. They're saying you've made reckless decisions, that you're destabilizing the estate, that you're not honoring your grandfather's legacy. Daniel turned back to her, his eyes sharp. And you? Clara didn't flinch. I think you're exactly what this place needs. That answer came too quickly. Daniel studied her. You didn't always think that. Clara held his gaze. People change. Another silence, but this one was different. Heavier. Suspicious. Before Daniel could respond, the front doors burst open. Ethan rushed in, breathless. We have a problem. Daniel frowned. Define problem. Ethan looked between them, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Someone broke into the archive room. Clara's eyes widened. What? Daniel's expression hardened instantly. When? Early this morning. The guard found the lock forced. Was anything taken? Ethan nodded. Yes. Daniel felt it before he heard it. What? He demanded. Ethan swallowed. The original will. The world seemed to go still. Daniel stared at him. That's not possible. It's gone, Ethan said. Completely gone. Clara stepped back slightly, her face pale. That document is the only physical proof of your ownership. I know what it is, Daniel snapped. Silence again, but now it pulsed with something darker. Fear. No, Daniel said, more to himself than to them. No, this is planned. This is too precise. Ethan nodded grimly. It gets worse. Daniel's eyes narrowed. How? Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. This was delivered an hour ago. Daniel took it, unfolding it carefully. His eyes scanned the page, then stopped. Clara watched his face change. What is it? Daniel didn't answer. Ethan spoke instead. It's a legal notice. Clara's voice dropped. From who? Ethan looked directly at Daniel. A claimant. The word echoed. Daniel's grip tightened on the paper. That's impossible. They're claiming, Ethan continued carefully, that the estate was never legally transferred to you. Clara shook her head. That's absurd. The will. The will is gone, Ethan interrupted. Silence crashed down. Daniel looked back at the document, his eyes moving faster now. What's the name? Clara asked. Daniel didn't respond. Daniel, she pressed. What name is on it? Slowly, he lowered the paper and spoke. Michael Whitmore. The name meant nothing. And everything. Clara frowned. Who is that? Daniel's face had gone completely still. I don't know, he said quietly. Ethan stepped forward. Then why do you look like you do? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the fireplace, staring into the cold, unlit hearth. I've seen that name before. Clara's breath caught. Where? Daniel closed his eyes briefly. In my grandfather's study. A chill ran through the room. Ethan frowned. That room was sealed for years. I know. Then how? I don't remember clearly, Daniel interrupted. But I remember the name. Written, hidden, like it wasn't meant to be found. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. You think this, Michael Whitmore, was connected to your grandfather? Daniel opened his eyes. Yes. Ethan's tone turned sharp. Or he is your grandfather's real heir. The implication hit like a blow. Clara shook her head immediately. No, that's not possible. Isn't it? Ethan countered. Daniel said nothing. And that silence was answer enough. Clara stepped closer to Daniel. Listen to me. This is exactly what they want. To shake you, to make you doubt everything. Daniel looked at her. Maybe there's something to doubt. Her expression hardened. Don't do that. Do what? Start tearing yourself apart before they even get the chance. Daniel's voice dropped. The will is gone, Clara. A stranger is claiming ownership, and the trustees are calling me unfit. Tell me what part of that doesn't sound like I'm already losing. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Ethan spoke instead. Then we fight. Daniel looked at him. How? Ethan's eyes were steady. We find proof. Clara nodded slowly. There has to be something else. Copies, records, anything your grandfather left behind. Daniel thought for a moment. Then something clicked. The ledger. Ethan frowned. What ledger? Daniel's voice grew quieter, but more certain. My grandfather kept a private ledger, not financial, personal, names, agreements, secrets. Clara's eyes widened. Where is it? Daniel hesitated. Then said, I think it was moved. Moved where? Ethan asked. Daniel looked toward the upper floors. The study. Clara shook her head. We already searched it. Not all of it. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Daniel's gaze sharpened. There's another compartment. Clara's breath caught. Another hidden space? Daniel nodded slowly. He was paranoid. He trusted no one. If he had something that important, he wouldn't leave it somewhere obvious. Ethan straightened. Then we go now. Daniel didn't move. Clara noticed. What is it? She asked. Daniel's voice dropped. If we find that ledger, we might not like what's inside. Ethan shrugged. At this point, does it matter? Clara looked at Daniel. It does, she said softly. Because some truths didn't just explain the past. They destroyed it. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again with resolve. Let's find it. And as the three of them turned toward the staircase, none of them noticed the figure watching from the far end of the hall. Still. Silent. Waiting. Because the game hadn't just changed. It had just begun. The staircase creaked beneath their steps, each sound echoing louder than it should. Daniel led the way. Clara followed close behind. Ethan brought up the rear. No one spoke. Because something had changed. Not just the danger, but the truth behind it. The study door stood open. Daniel slowed. That wasn't open before, Clara whispered. No, he said quietly, it wasn't. Ethan's voice hardened. We're not alone. Daniel stepped inside first. The room felt different. Disturbed. Drawers were slightly ajar. Papers had been shifted. The air itself felt used. Someone had been here. Recently. Clara moved toward the desk. They've already searched. Ethan checked the shelves. Or they knew exactly what to look for. Daniel didn't move at first. He stood in the center of the room, scanning everything slowly, deliberately. Then his eyes landed on the portrait above the fireplace. His grandfather. Watching. Always watching. Daniel walked toward it. Clara noticed immediately. You think it's behind there again? Daniel shook his head. No, not the same place. He reached out, pressing gently against the frame. Nothing. He exhaled. Then looked lower. At the fireplace itself. Ethan frowned. You think? Daniel knelt. Ran his fingers along the stone edges. Then stopped. There. A slight groove. Almost invisible. He pressed. A soft click echoed. And a narrow section of stone slid inward. Clara's breath caught. Another compartment. Inside. A small worn leather book. Daniel reached in slowly and pulled it out. The ledger. Silence filled the room. Ethan stepped closer. That's it? Daniel nodded faintly. Clara whispered, Open it. Daniel hesitated. Just for a second. Then he did. The pages were filled with names. Dates. Notes written in his grandfather's precise, unforgiving handwriting. Secrets. Deals. Power. Daniel flipped through carefully. Then stopped. His breath hitched. Clara saw it. What? Daniel didn't answer. He just turned the book slightly. So they could see. A name. Written clearly. Michael Whitmore. Clara's stomach dropped. So he was real. Ethan leaned in. What does it say? Daniel read slowly. Agreement established. Contingency heir. To remain hidden until necessary. The words echoed. Clara shook her head. Contingency heir? Ethan's voice turned sharp. A backup. Daniel's grip tightened. No, he said quietly. Not just a backup. He flipped one more page. And froze. Clara stepped closer. Daniel, what is it? His voice barely came out. Parentage confirmed. Silence. Clara blinked. What? Daniel looked up at them. His eyes hollow. Michael Whitmore isn't just connected to my grandfather. Ethan frowned. Then what? Daniel swallowed. He's his son. The room seemed to tilt. Clara stepped back. That's not possible. It is, Daniel said. And if that's true, Ethan added slowly, then legally. He has a claim, Daniel finished. Silence crushed the air out of the room. Everything made sense now. The will being stolen. The sudden claim. The pressure from the trustees. It wasn't chaos. It was strategy. Clara shook her head. But why hide him? Daniel flipped another page. His voice steadier now, but colder. Removed from public record. Protection necessary. Future uncertain. Ethan exhaled sharply. Your grandfather erased him. No, Daniel corrected quietly. He hid him. Clara's eyes filled with confusion. From what? No one answered. Because the truth was already forming. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. All three turned. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. A man stepped into the doorway. Mid-40s. Calm. Composed. And watching them like he had been watching for a long time. Daniel stood. His voice low. Michael Whitmore. The man smiled faintly. Daniel Hayes. Clara's heart pounded. You? Yes, Michael said smoothly. I suppose introductions are overdue. Ethan stepped forward slightly. You broke into the archive. Michael shrugged. I retrieved what belongs to me. Daniel's jaw tightened. The will belonged to my grandfather. Michael's gaze didn't waver. And I belonged to him. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Clara spoke, her voice shaking slightly. Why now? Michael looked at her briefly, then back at Daniel. Because the time for shadows is over. Daniel took a step closer. You've been planning this. Michael tilted his head. Planning? No. Waiting? Yes. For what? For you. The words landed sharply. Daniel frowned. Me? Michael nodded. I wanted to see what kind of man he chose over me. Silence. Clara looked between them. This isn't a competition. It was made one, Michael interrupted calmly. Ethan's voice hardened. By who? Michael's expression shifted, just slightly. By him. He glanced at the portrait. Daniel followed his gaze. My grandfather? Michael's voice lowered. Our father. The truth settled fully now. Unavoidable. Irreversible. Daniel exhaled slowly. If he wanted you hidden, there was a reason. Michael's eyes darkened. Yes, there was. Then tell me. A pause. Long. Tense. Then Michael stepped further into the room. Because I was the mistake he couldn't erase. Clara's breath caught. Daniel's voice softened. That's not. It is, Michael cut in. I was the part of his life that didn't fit his legacy, so he buried me. Ethan crossed his arms. And now you're here to take everything. Michael looked at him. Not everything. Then back to Daniel. Just what's mine. Daniel shook his head slowly. You think this estate will fix that? Michael's voice sharpened. I think truth matters. So do I. Silence. Then Daniel held up the ledger. He didn't abandon you. Michael's eyes flickered. Daniel stepped closer. He protected you. Michael laughed, quiet, bitter. From what? Daniel met his gaze. From this. He gestured around. The power, the corruption, the people who are already trying to tear this apart. Clara added softly, the trustees. Michael's expression shifted again. Just slightly. They contacted you too, didn't they? Daniel said. Michael didn't answer. That was answer enough. Ethan muttered, they're playing both sides. Daniel nodded slowly. They wanted you to challenge me. Clara's voice tightened, so they could control whoever wins. Michael looked between them. And for the first time, he hesitated. Daniel saw it. They don't care about you, he said quietly. Or me. Just the estate. Michael's jaw tightened. Silence stretched. Then, a slow realization. Clara spoke gently. Your father didn't hide you because he was ashamed. Michael looked at her. Then why? Because he knew this would happen. Daniel added, he created a test. Ethan frowned. A test? Daniel nodded. For both of us. Michael's voice lowered. And what exactly are we being tested on? Daniel closed the ledger. Whether we destroy each other. A pause. Or break the cycle. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Real. Michael looked at the ledger. Then at Daniel. Then at the portrait. And something inside him shifted. Not fully. But enough. The anger didn't disappear. But it cracked. He exhaled slowly. I didn't come here to be your enemy. Daniel nodded. Then don't be. Another pause. Then Michael reached into his coat and pulled something out. The will. Clara gasped softly. Ethan tensed. Michael looked at it for a moment, then extended it toward Daniel. I think this belongs to both of us. Daniel didn't take it immediately. He looked at Michael. Really looked. Not as a threat. Not as a rival. But as something far more complicated. Family. Slowly, he took the document. Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Ethan relaxed slightly. The tension didn't vanish. But it changed. Daniel spoke quietly. We can face the trustees together. Michael nodded once. Yes. Clara added, and end this before it destroys everything. Michael looked around the room. Then back at them. Then let's finish what he started. Daniel gave a faint, resolute nod. Together. And for the first time, the estate didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like something else. Something uncertain. Something fragile. But something real. Because power built on secrets always collapses. But truth, even painful truth, can rebuild what was broken. And as the four of them stood in that room, under the watchful eyes of the past, the future finally began to change.